fat, round, and frankly, disgusting. If you feel personally attacked right now, you've probably got some unresolved issues. If one of those unresolved issues is not being able to tighten up the low end of your amps, then today you're in luck because you're about to get a free tone dialing therapy session. The only thing that it's gonna cost you is your patience and your sanity because you have to listen to me. Buckle up because I'm gonna show you how to tighten the low end of any fat, flabby amplifier using just 2 incredibly affordable pedals. And they're both yellow. Let's do it. All right, guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle, and welcome to Belligerent Studios. What I do here is I take all sorts of awesome high-gain related guitar equipment, I record it with a simple setup, and I give you the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into E-standard thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes that definitely have a crusty booger on their nose right now, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks. All right, guys, so one of the most common questions that I get from the people that are constantly sliding in my DMs, you know the type, balding, overweight, middle-aged. It's basically me.
Is Kyle, what is the best way to tighten up the low end for some brutal, punchy chugs on my wet fart of an amplifier?
And one of the answers is obvious. Overdrive. A good overdrive can help focus and tighten the low end of any amplifier. That's just the way that they work. Most overdrives, such as the Boss SD1 here, not only hit the front end of your amplifier with an extra bit of signal, which helps compress the signal of the preamp, naturally kind of rounding off some of the low end and some of the high end, but most of them have been voiced to cut some of the low end frequencies coming from your guitar before it hits the front end of the amplifier. And I have personally met very few amplifiers that don't benefit from some sort of an overdrive out front if you want to tighten and focus the low end and kind of increase the speed of the response of the low end as well. Because in compressing and cutting out some of those low end frequencies going into the front of the amplifier, you are reducing some of those woofier low end frequencies that are inevitably going to end up in your speaker cabinet. And when your speaker has to reproduce less overall low end frequencies, it can actually react faster as the cone is moving in and out, sliding on the voice coil. Oh yeah. This is a nerdy one. But if you have an amplifier, and they definitely exist, or even putting something like the Boss SD1 overdrive in front of it doesn't cut enough low end to tighten up the amplifier for your needs, then I have a solution for you. You may be missing another important piece of the puzzle, and that is where our second pedal in this video comes in, a 7-band equalizer. Now, you don't absolutely have to get a 7-band equalizer. There are a number of different EQs you can get, with one of the most popular options being the MXR 10-band EQ. But I chose these two particular pedals because frankly, I use both of them all the time, and they are incredibly affordable. I know how tough times are out there financially for so many people, and frankly, I don't want to create more gear envy at the moment for people who don't have a lot of expendable income. I want to show you stuff that everybody can afford because you absolutely do not need to spend a ton of money to get a ton of tone these days. So the reason that the 7-band EQ is important because not only can you use the sliders here to cut some of those lower frequencies, which in turn cuts even more of the low end out of the front end or of the signal going into the front end of the amplifier. I'm not good at speaking good word.
Me job badass.
But what I really like about this is you can further boost the signal on the front end of the amplifier by boosting the level on the 7-band EQ, and what that is going to do is it's going to add more overall output going into the front of the amplifier, so you are going to be able to turn the gain down a bit on the front of the amplifier. And a lot of these amps that suffer from that loose low end, they also suffer from muddiness when you're trying to turn up the gain in order to get the amount of saturation that you want out of the amplifier. So what you're essentially doing is boosting it with the SD1 and then boosting the signal even more using the level control of the 7-band EQ, but you are able to control that low end and cut some of those low frequencies so you're not adding low end back in on the front end and basically re-fattening your signal by boosting the level. This will allow you to run the gain lower on your amplifier, which generally, depending on the amp, but in most cases, results in a little bit of a leaner and less muddy tone. And then finally, it will also increase, and then finally, further boosting the level into the front end of the amplifier will also increase that impression. What? If this is your first time viewing my channel, probably a bad impression. It will further increase the compression of those low and high frequencies by hitting the front end of the amp harder. So if you are a purist, if you're the type of person that says,
oh, I spent $3,000 on my amplifier, it shouldn't need pedals,
go ahead and click off of this video right now, because this video is for people that like to experiment with their tone and like to fine tune and tweak things in order to get them exactly where they want them using any means necessary. You know, smart people. So I'm going to show you these pedals in action, tightening the low end of a few really fat amplifiers. And I really think that some of you who have never tried this before might actually be shocked with how great of a result you can get by combining these two pedals and tweaking them until you get the right tone. And if you decide that you want to pick up these pedals, some of their more expensive alternatives, or even some of the amplifiers that we're gonna use in the video today, do me a favor and hit that Sweetwater link that's gonna be in the description and in the comments of this video, because they are sponsoring this little shindig. You can pick up both of these pedals as well as some of the alternatives that I'm gonna list down below in the comments and in the description of this video. And the amazing thing about Sweetwater is even if you just wanna pick these up and try it out for yourself, if you don't have them on hand and you find out that it's not really for you, Sweetwater has an awesome return policy. So you're basically able to do this risk-free. And if you decide that you do really love the results and you kind of want to try some different flavors, hit up my man Ian Hawes at Sweetwater and he can give you some awesome recommendations on other pedals that will do the thing just a little bit different. So I'm gonna shut the hell up. We are gonna toss these pedals in front of a couple amplifiers and hear some glorious
chugs.
Let's do it. Guys, so I figured that I would start off with the supreme example of tubby amps, the first amp that comes to mind whenever we're thinking about fat, bulbous low end. And that is, of course, the Mesa dual rectifier. So this amp is extremely well known for having a big, loose, round low end. It's known for kind of having that like slow tracking feel, which essentially means like when you're putting notes I guess for lack of a better word, when you're playing guitar, it almost feels like there's a slight bit of a lag between the low end note and your hand, and that is just because of the resonance of the speaker cone, because there's so much low end going on there. So when you start cutting out those low end frequencies, the amp not only starts tightening up, but it just feels more responsive. And then as far as the saturation, you guys heard, we started off with hardly any saturation, and then we got the amp up to super saturation, but not with a lot of that, basically that typical mud that the rectifier is associated with when you start pushing the gain, because you have to push the gain really hard on these amplifiers to get a good saturation. So real quick, to round out the signal chain here, we are going into my Mesa 1999 traditional 412 cab. We've got the stock vintage 30s in this cabinet. We've got both an SM57 and a Sennheiser MD421 in front of those speakers, and there will be no post-processing on anything you guys hear in this video today. My guitar is my Gallagher Typhon, and I specifically chose this guitar because it has a Motor City Pickups FYU in it, FYIU. And this is just known as being kind of like a big and dark sounding pickup, and in my experience, it is all of that. It's exactly that. So this guitar is a fairly dark and fat sounding guitar overall. So again, I'm gonna kick these pedals on one by one just to reiterate what these pedals are doing, how much of an effect they're having. Now, I don't know about you guys, but something that tight and percussive and aggressive sounding is not really a tone that I typically associate with the rectifier. I always think of the rectifier as that big kind of, you know, it's a little scoopy in the low mids. It's got a lot or a decent amount of upper mids. I don't think it's a scooped amp like a lot of people say that it is. It really depends on a lot of things. I'm getting off track. But anyways, just something that tight and aggressive yet still punchy. Not really something I think of when I think of the rectifier. And using these pedals, like I could get away with playing this amp for tight, fast thrash, and that's just not something that previously, before kind of discovering this, that I would have thought of. Now, one thing you may be saying is,
Kyle, you don't need these pedals in order to get that level of saturation out of this amplifier.
you are 100% right, but in doing so and cranking that preamp gain, you introduce a lot of mud and a lot of flub. Listen to how much mud that introduces to the tone. Listen to how much it darkens the tone. I've just never been a fan of that. Maybe you are for some of the stuff that you're trying to play, but we're focusing on tight and percussive tones here. And that is not tight and percussive. Yeah, dude, just not my thing. I've always hated the mud that was introduced on the rectifier by doing so, and typically kicking on just that overdrive could get you definitely much closer and add some saturation. Frankly, I think that sounds really good, but the saturation is a little bit on the light side, and if we were to tune down a lot more and still want to get a percussive and clean tone, I think even at this setting, it would kind of start to fall apart. Even that, it's just muddy when you're trying to dial up that saturation to that like super saturated kind of fizzy, liquidy sounding thing. Not the greatest for like recording and tracking, but if you are a, you know, single guitar in a drop C hardcore band, you're gonna want that saturation to fill things out. Listen to how much more aggression, how much more top end and upper mid clarity is there. The low end just punches so nicely. I love this combination of pedals. One other thing that you guys might be saying is, Kyle, you're screaming over the white noise of the amplifier because you have these two pedals on. And you are absolutely right. At the moment, I usually have all of my pedals in the loop of a 4-cable method gate, but because I have them up here for the purposes of this video, they're not in the loop of the 4-cable method gate. But if you were to use something like the Red 7 NGR1, which is a 4-cable method gate, and you have these in the loop of said gate,
How many times can I say gate?
then you would not experience any of this additional white noise that comes with engaging both of these pedals in front of your amplifier. So keep that in mind. And then one other nice thing about this is you literally have an EQ in front of your amplifier. So if you want more mids out of the guitar that you're using, you can just bump the mids on the EQ. That sounds like a quacky dog's ass the way that I have it dialed in. But I mean, if you're tuning down and playing modern metal, you kind of want that quack from your guitar. And if your guitar is too dark to give it to you, just use the EQ in conjunction with things. I mean, this is a really versatile setup that can deliver a lot of things, a lot of tweakability to your tone. And considering these two pedals together cost 90 bucks, it's honestly one of the best investments you can make if you are a tone tweaker. But if you're a regular tweaker, you probably won't have any money at all. Not sure what that has to do with anything we're talking about here today. Let's move on to the next amplifier. All right, guys, so last but not least, we have a little bit of a wild card. We have a Peavey Windsor here, which is an amplifier that you can pick up for like 300 bucks. Pretty affordable on the used market. This one has been slightly modified though. I have had the circuit to be modified to be essentially closer to a regular JCM 800. My good friend Mike Wagner of Wagner Amp Repair performed the modifications for me, and I think it cost me like 200 bucks or something like that. Well worth it. But anyways, the reason that I'm showing you this is because these two pedals can act as a double boost and take a vintage amplifier from, you know, kind of poopy sounding to modern metal heaven. So here we go. Guys, so there you have it. The double boost sounded ridiculous, tightening the low end up of a fat amplifier using $90 worth of pedals. Honestly, man, again, I think this is the best investment you can make if you're a tone tweaker and you're not quite happy with the amplifier that you have. These two pedals can do so much. You can stick the EQ in the loop if you don't want to use it in front of the overdrive. These are just two standard pedals that I think every tone tweaker should have. You don't have to get exactly these pedals either. These are just for the purposes of this video. There are all sorts of options as far as overdrives and EQ pedals that you can use out there. But if you do end up wanting to browse or pick up these pedals or any of the alternatives, please do me a favor, get them from the fine folks at Sweetwater using my affiliate link because they sponsored this video. They made all of this possible and they are the best in the business at what they do. I can't thank them enough for the amount that they support this channel so that I can provide useful content like this for you guys. So with that said, what did you guys think? Did this do exactly what I said it did? Were you hearing something different on your side of the screen, or have you used these pedals for years and I'm basically just preaching to the choir and you want to talk a bunch of smack down in the comments? Leave it down there. I'll be sure to meet you guys down there to chat about it. Hit the like button if you like the video. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Let me know if you guys want to see more content like this about tone tweaking amplifiers, because this is the stuff that I live for. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.
You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.